Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Johnson Space Center. I'm Anna Schneider with NASA Communications, and today I am joined by NASA astronaut Chris Williams. Chris recently returned to Earth, landing in Kazakhstan on Sunday, July 26th, alongside the rest of his Soyuz MS-28 crew to conclude an 8-month mission aboard the International Space Station. We will begin with some opening remarks from Chris before opening it up for questions both here in the room and on the phone bridge. As a reminder for those joining us virtually on the phone bridge, you can press *1 to enter the queue to ask your question, and you can press *2 to remove yourself from the queue. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Chris.
Thanks, Anna. It's really an absolute pleasure to be here. I had been on the space station for the past 8 months, and it feels wonderful to be back on Earth. I wanted to start by just expressing my gratitude. A space mission like this, it only comes together through the extreme hard work of a huge number of people supporting on the ground, and I feel super honored to have been able to be a part of this mission, and I really want to say thank you to everybody that made that possible. I felt like I was super fortunate. I got to be up in space with 16 other really incredible people over the course of my mission, and got to do a whole bunch of different things. A whole lot of science experiments that are going to help us understand how to better explore further into space and also make life better on Earth. Got to do a few spacewalks to help prepare our station for the future and to help fix our robotic arm. And I got to help capture one of our cargo vehicles. Just so many things. So it was a really full mission, and I feel really lucky to have had the opportunity, and really proud of everything we accomplished up there. So I really appreciate it, and I'm really ready and happy to be back on Earth, but also super excited to watch my crewmates as they get ready for a few EVAs and all the incredible things they're going to do throughout the rest of their mission up there.
Amazing. We will go ahead and open it up for questions. We'll start here in the room with Gina Zinseri.
Chris, you had a remarkable event on the space station, well, many, but you had to shelter in place for the leak. Tell me how that day played out and what your takeaway was from that event.
Yeah, that was certainly a very unusual day on station. So it was not something that we were expecting to do. We knew that there was some work going on with the PRK, and that there were some cracks in the pressure vessel that they were investigating. But we sort of were going about our normal day until we were called up and told to go shelter in the Dragon. Now, thankfully, this is something that we talked about and planned for. It's certainly not a great feeling because my two crewmates are over on the Russian segment working in this capsule in this compartment, and so you don't feel great when your crewmates are over there on the other side. But we planned and prepared for a 5-person shelter-in-place Dragon, so it sort of went as when difficult situations like that come up, you fall back on your training, and we knew exactly what to do, and we also knew that the ground teams were working on how to make sure that we could get out of this situation as safely as possible, and so we were really thinking a lot about, like, okay, what do we bring with us so that if we're there for a couple hours, we have snacks and that sort of thing, but at the same time keeping Sergei and Sergei in our minds. So it was definitely an unusual day, but you kind of flip into that mode where you fall back on your training.
Yeah.
I met your parents before your launch at an event in D.C., and your dad told me he was a little bit nervous about your launch. What did your family tell you? I'm sure you spoke with them many times after your launch. What was that launch experience like for your family?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's awesome that they were able to meet you. My family actually had an incredible launch experience, and they actually have not stopped talking about how fun and how interesting it was, because they were able to travel to Baikonur, Kazakhstan, which not too many folks get the opportunity to do, and they were able to travel over there with a few folks from NASA to kind of help support them, a couple other astronauts, Mike Barrett, Doug Wheelock, as well as our flight surgeons and a lot of our other support team, and just the the history there and the cultural experience of getting to see a place like Baikonur and all of the traditions that surround a Soyuz launch. I mean, there are traditions dating back to Yuri Gagarin of planting trees and a number of different ones of them. And everybody was so gracious in inviting our families to participate in that I think that seeing all of the tradition, all of the history, but also all of the people that were there to make the launch safe, and that they've done this many, many, many times before. I think that all really helped my parents feel very comfortable, because I think before they got the chance to come over for the launch, all of this was an unknown. It's just this mystery of what is a space launch, and I think seeing that, really opened their eyes and made them see, okay, this is something that we have a huge professional team that are all working together, but also such a legacy of doing this that I think it helped them get more comfortable with it.
We're going to take a couple of questions from social media before we go over to the phone bridge. As a reminder, for those on the phone bridge, you can press *1 to enter the queue and *2 to remove yourself from the queue. So Alexander Stovek, 7 on Instagram, asked, what was the most challenging part of the spacewalks you did?
Ooh, what was the most challenging part of the spacewalks? I think there's a lot of different tough things about spacewalks. I think though, for me, the most challenging part of it is actually all the preparation. You're going to be outside performing a task, and you're going to maybe be outside for 6 or 7 hours working. And we train for that a lot. We do underwater practice in the neutral buoyancy lab, maybe not for the exact tasks that we're doing on our spacewalk, but at least for the various sort of things that you need to do to get the job done outside. But before the spacewalk, you spend hours and hours and hours studying, because you want to know every last detail of what you're going to be doing out there. And you want to know that, if this bolt doesn't work exactly the right way, well, what are the next 4 things mission control is going to have us do to work on it, so that you can be ready for all those eventualities. So I think for me, that's one of the things that's the hardest. Once you get out the door, I was worried, especially on my first spacewalk. A lot of people describe a feeling of falling when you sort of go out of the airlock and you just see the Earth out beneath you, and I was a little bit worried about that, but thankfully I didn't really have that feeling. I will be honest, I practiced a few times going into the cupola and trying to kind of float belly down in the cupola to get that sense of floating over the Earth, but when the airlock opened, I took a moment to be like, wow, that's really beautiful. But after just a half second, your brain flips into, it's time to get to work mode, and you get outside the space station, and honestly, so many things feel very familiar to our training that we have here in Houston at the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. You're the outside of the space station, even though I'd never really seen it before, except for the parts you can see from our windows. It just felt super familiar. And a lot of the work that we were doing felt super familiar. There are a lot of differences in working in microgravity versus working underwater in the pool. But you kind of get used to those. And we had some tough things on our spacewalks, especially on my second spacewalk with fixing the Canada arm. There were a lot of just really big things that you're moving. The end of the arm that Jessica and I were both holding and passing back and forth weighs almost 1,000 pounds. And holding that is not easy. Holding it steady is not easy. And then trying to maneuver while you have such a big thing, it's not easy. But those are all things that I also felt really well prepared for with our training.
All right, Sarah Lawrence, 2833, asks, what was your favorite experiment you did while aboard the International Space Station?
That's a really tough question, because we did a ton of experiments and across all different areas of science. There's kind of a couple areas that we got to do a bunch of experiments helping to develop new medications or new drugs or techniques for cancer therapies, and that connects back to my previous life before I was an astronaut, working in radiation oncology. And so I felt really privileged to be a part of helping to develop some new cancer therapeutics. I loved some of the solid state physics work that we were doing, helping to develop new semiconductors. That was really cool. But probably from just like a personal standpoint, I think my favorite was a plant growth experiment that we did where we grew some alfalfa. I think the science is really cool. It was looking at how nitrogen-fixing bacteria in the soil interact with plant roots in space. But for me, it was just very personally satisfying because I really missed like growing things. 8 months in space in the space station, there's not much growing there, and so it was really nice to be able to go in and water the plants on the weekend and see them grow. And when you pulled down, there were sort of these plastic baffles around the plant growth habitat, and when you pulled that down, it smelled like life, like Earth, and that was a smell that you really, really miss. So I'd say that was maybe my favorite, just from that personal side, but it's kind of hard to pick.
We'll go over to the phone bridge now with Jonathan Sari with Fox News.
Thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us, Chris. I have another family question. At Fox News, we have the pleasure of working with your uncle, Juan Williams, who is so proud of you. You can literally see tears of joy in his eyes when he talks about you as an astronaut on a long-duration mission. How important is it to have that support from family back home?
It's absolutely critical. 8 months is a long time to be away from your family and from the whole planet. We are pretty lucky in that, as technology has improved, we've gotten better and better connectivity on space station. And so being able to stay in touch with my family and know that I have their support and their backing was just absolutely critical. Because you do go through, as amazing as it is to be in space, you do go through days that are harder, where maybe things didn't go your way and you had to work really hard and maybe still didn't get to where you wanted to get to, and you miss your family, you miss your kids. But knowing that you have their just their love and support from the ground, and that people are so proud of what you're doing and so excited by what you're doing, that really helps give you the strength to kind of push through those days and to, especially early on in the mission where you're looking at, boy, I'm going to be up here for how many more months, and this is hard. Knowing that you have their love and support and the excitement that it brings, not only your family members, but everybody around the world, that really helps keep you going.
Next up, we have Mike Wall with Space.com.
Thank you for doing this. Just a quick question, Chris. I've noticed you took a lot of really great photos from the ISS, and it seemed to be important to you to share those with those of us on Earth. I just wondered kind of how you view that sort of outreach component of the mission. Is that a really important part of being up there in space? And what are some things that you had hoped to kind of communicate to those of us down to Earth with those photos? Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, and absolutely. But before going up on this mission, I'd always liked taking pictures, but I would never have described myself as like a photography, a photography lover. But definitely after my time on station, I will say that I do love photography. And to me, a lot of it was trying to both capture, but then also communicate just what a special place our planet is and the space station is. I never got tired of the view out of the window, and I tried to make a point of every day at least spending at least 10 minutes just staring out of the window, looking at our planet, looking at the night sky, and just trying to absorb it all. And I know for me, it really had a profound impact on me. And I think through photography, I was hoping to be able to both keep some of those memories and keep some of those feelings with me that I can, keep as mementos, but also to communicate that same feeling, to try to pass that on to folks on the ground. And so it's something that I think is really important, because I think seeing our planet from up there, you really just gain a huge appreciation of its beauty and its connectedness and its fragility. And I think I'm super excited. I was glad to be able to share some of that while I was up there, and I think I'm going to have about 40 terabytes worth of photos that I need to sort through post-flight. And so hopefully I will be able to continue to share some of those photographs that I took. I think it's just a really special way to capture some of the feeling in the moment and to try to communicate that. So I think that's really important to me.
We have a question that was submitted by a participant here in the room who asks, was there a procedure you trained extensively for that ended up being more challenging in orbit than you expected?
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of them, but honestly, I think the procedure that we do a lot in training that was just probably the hardest thing that you do on orbit is opening a bag and finding something in that bag. Like, it's just surprisingly difficult to, a procedure will tell you to open this CTB or cargo transfer bag that we call them, big shoebox plus sized bag, and find the Ziploc bag in it. On Earth in our training simulations, okay, you go find the bag, you open it up. It's training, so maybe there's only 3 or 4 bags in there, and it's a Ziploc bag and another bag. It's pretty easy, right? Anybody can do that. And on orbit, I never, it never ceased to amaze me how difficult it was to open up a bag that maybe has 40 or 50 Ziploc bags in it, to find a single Ziploc bag, and everything just starts floating in every which way. So I'd say that was, just managing things in microgravity. You get good at it, but it's never easy. Things float everywhere. You have Velcro everywhere. You have to Velcro your tools down. And even being up there for 8 months, you'd still find days where you put your wrench down on this piece of Velcro, and then a minute later it's not there anymore. And you'd spend 10 minutes hunting and trying to find which air vent that wrench gets sucked up to.
We'll take another question from social media. Kay Shannon on Instagram asks, what was your favorite food aboard the International Space Station?
Great question. I actually really liked the food up there in general. I think our food lab does, a fantastic job of giving us a lot of really delicious meals. But what I would say, the thing that I really missed being up there was variety. We have a pretty decent variety of food, but you can kind of go through the rotation, and after a month or two of the same rotation, you crave some variety. And so I think some of my favorite things that we had were some of the kind of more special foods. One of them was that for lots of big celebratory days, especially our cosmonaut colleagues were great at this. We would try to make cakes in space. And so you'd kind of, it'd be like a little bit of cooking. You'd try to take the ingredients you have, whether some of, there was some honey bread that the cosmonauts had that they could make as a good base. We had our maple muffin tops and cinnamon rolls you could kind of use as a base layer. But being able to put all that stuff together and make something that was just different was really fun. We also got ice cream on one of our cargo vehicles, and that wasn't something that I'd had a craving for until I actually had a bite of it, and then it was like, okay, that was really good ice cream.
Ice cream always hits the spot, even
Absolutely.
On Earth. Dan Chui on Instagram asks, how did you feel when you first saw Earth outside of the atmosphere for the first time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a memory that I have sort of like baked into my consciousness. It was during our Soyuz launch, after the sort of pretty dynamic, acceleration and, sort of 9 minutes is getting up into orbit. You're sort of still getting used to the feeling of microgravity. And for me, what it felt like was that I was hanging upside down in my seat once the engines cut off and I was looking at our control panel upside down. But I remember sort of feeling like I was hanging upside down in my seat, looking out of the window and just seeing like the sun cresting over the horizon of Earth. And it was just jaw-droppingly beautiful, absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful. You could see just, how thin our atmosphere is, but also just, you really get a sense of how small our planet, our Earth is a big place, but it's not that big, and how small it is, and just how pretty it is. So I think, it was a real special moment. The sun kind of cutting at that glancing angle just really highlighted the clouds, and I thought it was really, really pretty.
For those in the room, you can raise your hand if you have a question, and for those on the phone bridge, you can press *1 to enter the queue, *2 to remove yourself from the queue. Cameron Will 18 on Instagram asks, did you pick up any habits on the space station you never thought of on Earth?
Yeah. One habit that I picked up on the space station that I never really found myself doing on Earth is I ended up kind of being more of a night owl amongst my crewmates. My crewmates all went to bed really early from my perspective. Like after around 9:30 at night, like I was the only one out and about. And I made it a habit of going down to the cupola and just like every single night, trying to take, maybe not every single night, but almost every night, taking about like 5 or 10 minutes, just sit in the cupola, stare out the window, and just kind of like not, with no objective, no goal, just to sit and relax and like just reflect on the day. And I feel like on Earth, that's not something I ever really had made time to do. And I thought it was really, really nice. Especially given the view we have on the space station, it really helps, bring things into perspective, and really, helps me to stay super excited about our mission. So, taking a little time every day to just sit and reflect, I think, is something that I picked up on space station. Also, swallowing your toothpaste. It's not something I ever do on Earth, but kind of made life easier on space station. All the silly things that living in space that are difficult. Yeah, that's something that never thought I would do, but yeah, did for 8 months.
Gina, another question from Gina. Yeah.
Just about every astronaut I've spoken with has said going to space has changed them fundamentally, religiously, philosophically, that it is a life-changing experience. How would you describe that for you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something I'm still really working on taking the time to kind of reflect on. I think for me, it reinforced a lot of things that I already kind of had thought about a little bit. Just one being how special of a place our planet is, and also how fragile it is, and really how we need to we need to really appreciate that and take care of it. I think it also really highlighted for me how connected our world is. There's I think this old saying of you can't see borders from space, which is actually not true. You can actually at night actually very clearly see some borders, which is actually kind of cool. But when you're flying over the planet, you see how interconnected everything is, and how we're kind of all in this all in this place together. And I know that can sound a little bit corny, but it's something that I think you really start to feel pretty deeply when you see the planet from up there. I think it also, maybe surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, made me really appreciate people even more. The people that I was up there with, the other astronauts and cosmonauts. That just how much people can make a place. And I think one of the most special things about being on the space station was the people that you get to share that experience with. And I think that that made a really deep mark on me, and also realizing how much I missed my family and my friends back on Earth, and how it really helped highlight for me how important those relationships and those people are. So I think that was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but that going to space would be all about people. It's human spaceflight.
We're going to take one final question from social media. Husker Mags on Instagram asked, "What is your
favorite memory in space?" I think my favorite memory, there's a couple of them, but welcoming new crew members onto the space station was just absolutely a joy. And I was super lucky in that I got to welcome a couple, even of my astronaut classmates, rookies, and a couple rookies onto the space station. And just seeing their eyes as they, both when, the moment they come through the hatch, but also in the days as they start adapting and learning what it is like to live and work in space was just absolutely the coolest thing ever. And some of it's funny, some of it's you're floating through the lab, and it takes a little while to get used to translating or moving around station in microgravity. And when you're new up there, you kind of are bouncing off the walls every which way. And so when a new person comes up, they float through the lab, and you float through the lab behind them, picking up all the expensive cameras and other equipment that they knocked off the wall in their wake and didn't realize. And and you chuckle, but you also remember that you were that person just a couple months ago doing that. And and then how just in a matter of weeks, all of a sudden they're flying and doing somersaults and flips, and and it's like they were born there. And just so seeing that, it's kind of a montage of memories in my head, but seeing that evolution in a couple people just was a really cool experience, because it brings you back to when you sort of had that just sense of wonder of first being up in space, and being able to see other people have that experience. I think for me it was super special.
All right, and with that, we will go ahead and conclude today's news conference. Thank you for joining us.